to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion from Alex. For a second. I'll second. Second from Will. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Yeah, flying through this meeting. Does anybody request any changes to the agenda? None? Alrighty, well, in that case, let's just jump to full speed into new business. Rochelle.
Yes, perfect. Well, I'd like to take a second and introduce Tracy Johnson. She's with ESA. You guys might know her. She was also part of the Trails and Plan Master, the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And so she's here tonight to talk about the amendments. And let me make you host, Tracy, so then you can share your screen with us as you walk us through.
I'm not sure if I'll need to share screens, but if I do, I am prepared to do that. So hi, everyone. A little surprised to be back so soon talking about the Park and Trail System Master Plan, but a couple of things came up after we adopted this. So the plan was adopted in, actually, I don't remember, it was either late September or early October of 2021. And then when we started to work on the code language for to update that to align with our Park and Trail System Master Plan, we started discussing some things that maybe we should consider revisiting. And so there was a suggestion in the original master plan. This was what started the amendment. The original master plan, we had trails identified as something that we needed, and they were quantified by the mile. And as we tried to adopt that into the code, previously land acquisitions in the code were identified by the acre. And so it was proposed that we convert our trail miles to acres. And so that's the primary change that happened in the amendment. Was basically we have several different trail classifications with different trail widths and trail corridors associated with them. And I kind of ran the calculations from a couple different perspectives, and we basically doing a standard corridor width of 15 feet versus doing a variable corridor width based on the trail classification. They ended up almost identical. And so we just simplified it and we just converted. So we took, I think, sorry, I don't have the actual original mileage in front of me, but we originally had something like 20 miles of trails that we needed. And basically I converted miles to linear feet and multiplied that by a 15-foot corridor and then converted that to acres. And so that's how we converted from a mileage calculation to an acreage calculation. And then that simplified things for how we think about our land acquisitions and the development needs we need for the parks and trails moving forward, and how we can adopt that into the code so that it's easy for planning to extract that land as needed as development comes in. When we decided to move forward with the amendment, there were a couple of other things that we picked up that were little housekeeping things. The draft that went before council included an estimated population. So late summer of last year, we finally got the official census data because it was delayed. We already had published, you know, the draft that was before council was already public at that point. So we hadn't chosen to up the population, but when we reopened the file, so to speak, an opportunity to update the population to what we truly knew it was based on the census. And so there was a little bit of an adjustment that kind of filtered through a number of tables in the document because, you know, in chapter 3, we list our population existing and proposed. The proposed population, interestingly, didn't change, but the existing population was a little bit higher than expected. And so that just had a little bit of an effect on some of the calculations that run through the rest of the document.
What was the existing population? Do you know?
The let's just see here. So I have are you asking what it was before the amendment?
No, from the census.
Oh, from the census. Okay. Page 9. So the official census population for 2020 was 12,612.
And what did we think it was going to be?
11,650. So it was about 1,000 more than was estimated. And so how that happens is because the census is done every 10 years, the most solid estimate of population is the year of the census. And then every year after that, there's what they call the Population Research Center, the PRC, which is based at Portland State, and they assess the state, they assess all the counties and the cities annually, and they estimate annual growth and put out an adjusted projection of what they think the population is. And so every year after the census, they issue a new revised population estimate, but it's only an estimate. So it's based on average growth, and it's a fairly informed estimate, but it can vary. And so at the time that we were finishing up the Park and Trail System Master Plan last year, we were at the worst point in the estimating cycle because we were at the end of 9 or 10 years of estimating and didn't have the new census yet. And so that's where you get a little bit more of a variability than you would otherwise normally see. So that was something else that we adjusted with the amendment. And then just as we were finalizing the document, planning noticed that there were a couple of the existing trails on the maps. There were a couple that were inaccurate, and then there were a couple that were actually missing. So even though we've had these maps floating around for a while as we went through this process, there were still a couple of loose ends that just needed to be cleaned up. So those are the primary things that changed. One other thing that changed as we went through the process was the trail CIP list, the capital improvement list, which is in the appendix. It's a pretty long list, and at the time that we were going through getting ready for adoption, the transportation system plan was still lagging pretty far behind our progress on our project. And they just weren't in a position to really align with what we were doing. And so this gave us an opportunity for them to catch up a little bit. And so we kind of looked at our trail list and what they were forecasting for the transportation, for the bike and pedestrian multimodal, not car portion of the transportation system plan. And so we made a few adjustments to the trail CIP. A few of the trails are, got adjusted and put into the transportation system plan cost estimates rather than in the park plan. You can't have them in both places. So it's really, is it a park and recreation facility, or is it more of a transportation facility? And so things that were associated with roads that could be a multi-use site, like a larger sidewalk adjacent to a street that are likely to occur in the right of way, those trails we moved to the transportation system plan. So pretty, it was like some little nitty gritty details, but we just had to touch a number of things throughout the document to just clean those things up and make little adjustments so that it was easier to align with other city documents. Does anybody have any questions? Do you want me to show you anything like the maps where they changed or anything like that?
So we get to calculating the miles to acreage. I don't quite grasp, I can't wrap my head around the 15-foot corridor. So if I was building a trail across alongside a pre-existing right of way, then that would make sense. But trails typically don't do that. So it seems like an underestimate to me, or maybe I'm missing something. So maybe you can help me with that.
So it was based on two things. So let me navigate to a place and then I'll share screens with you. So like I said, that 15-foot conversion, that was an average across all of the trail standards. And so what that was, hold on a moment, I can't talk and navigate simultaneously, apparently. Share screen, there we go. So I don't know how well this will come in on the shared view. But what we were looking at is basically the majority of the trails in our system fall into, we have 4 trail classifications, but the majority of the trails fall into either the class 2 or the class 3. And so these are trail standards that are in the back of the master plan. And they are intended to provide as a guide for how, what these trails might look like. They're sort of standard cross sections. So you can see in most cases, like a natural surface, like a natural area trail, it's really narrow. It's like what you would find in the forest, 3 feet wide, natural surface, not really a shoulder. It's, a very small, narrow footpath. And then a class 3 neighborhood connection, usually that's going to be paved. It could also be compacted gravel, 5 to 6 feet wide with 1.5 foot clear shoulder on the sides. And then as we move through the trails, class 2 is a little wider, 6 to 8 foot wide with a 1 to 1.5 foot shoulder on the side. And then the largest trails, the class 1s, are going to be 10 to 12 feet wide, probably more like 8 to 10 in reality. I don't think the city of Sandy rather has anything that's at a 10 to 12 foot width currently, but that would be, so this is where like the maximum at 10 feet plus 2 feet shoulders on each side would be 14 feet. And so that was kind of the guideline. This isn't, like the conversion to acreage is an average, and it was expected that it would, let me scroll down so you're looking at something interesting. It was intended to be a tool to estimate land for trails, but it spans all of these different classifications from fairly narrow to wide. So some of these trails, like the natural area trails, you're not going to acquire a corridor, and you're not likely to acquire a trail corridor and put a soft surface trail in. But these other classifications, you might acquire a 15-foot passage through a new neighborhood, and then the intention would be that you'd be able to, it'd be wide enough to build a trail on. Does that make sense?
Let me try a little bit, or ask a couple of questions to maybe clarify a little bit. When we're talking about a 15-foot trail width, we're talking about the standard for the trail itself. We're not talking about any additional properties adjacent to it. So as we're setting up our SDCs based on our needs, both trail and land, our SDCs are kind of broken into 2 pieces, correct? One piece for potential trail acquisition and the other piece for land acquisition. Those 2 overlay on top of each other, correct? So that we're not saying, well, we're only going to buy 15 feet wide pieces of property for trails, because I'm going to take a pretty super skinny. We'd be buying property and utilizing 15 feet width of that property for the actual trail construction itself.
I think it's a combination. It could be either in combination with a trail parcel, or in some cases it could be standalone, like just the trail corridor, similar to like a right of way, but it's a trail right of way instead of a road right of way.
Right, or it would be like between 2 houses.
Exactly.
When they're planning a subdivision, that would become our minimum request of a 15-foot right of way to allow for access to get to a regional trail behind it.
Yep.
Was that clarifying for you? Or confusing?
It just seems, it seems light, because I think the trail's going like this, not going in a straight line. I mean, I understand the pass-throughs, and maybe not talking about parcels that are big enough to support the kind of trail. It just seems, like I said, unless you're building a straight line trail, you can buy a corridor that's 15 feet wide, then that's not really a trail, it's a sidewalk. So.
Yes, no, if you're working with a developer who's building a subdivision and they're planning on having property set aside for open space, and we were asking for a trail to be able to access through that open space, rather than buying the entire open space, which is set aside, basically buying 15 feet, doesn't mean that's a straight shot. It can be serpentine, trees, whatever. But basically, it limits us to just having to buy the trail access point and not the entire. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Did I get that right?
Sorry, what was that?
That's what you said. Did you follow my conversation with Will?
Yes, I could hear that. Yes,
Okay, and was I accurate there?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? So, Rochelle, would you mind talking a little bit about assuming we follow the recommended language on the adoption, what happens next?
If the Parks Board is willing to make a motion, say that we set the amended, proposed system master plan amendment, then the next step would be to go to the council to, or I believe planning commission and the council, endorsing the changes as Tracy laid out.
Is there a timeline for that?
I believe we're going to be bringing this to planning commission in April.
There was one other piece of unfinished business that we're still waiting on, and that is the systems development charges. Correct me if I'm wrong. They need this information to be able to finish that application, correct?
Tracy, do you want to answer that? I mean, this would be one of those things where if we make the amendments, we approve this is one of those pieces that falls into helping us complete the work with the SDCs and Vietnam.
That's correct. So we have been working on the SDCs. We had a meeting with FCS in December, and then that was when we realized we needed to align our CIP list for the trails with TSP. So we put FCS on hold so that they had a final list to work from. We didn't want them to basically go down the road of calculating an SDC that we then, made a change to the project list on. So we modified the project list and got them a revised project list in January, late January. And so then they completed work on the draft SDC, and now they're moving into the fee in lieu. And so for the fee in lieu, they're working on getting an appraisal for land value to use to base the fee in lieu estimate off of. And so I have not gotten an estimate on the date of when they think they're going to have that, but we're expecting it's going to lag a little bit behind, but it is in progress.
Right, but our SDCs are based on our perceived future needs. Perceived future needs are based on population growth, and an increase in growth was not planned for. We recognize tonight there's 1,000 more than what we would have had before, or basically a 10% increase. I would think would also impact potentially our future levels of service, which impacts our SDCs. Is that not correct?
Yes, so that's exactly correct. And so what actually ended up happening in that case, Don, is that the current population increased, which means that our current level of service is lower than what we had originally estimated by a little bit because of that, because we had 1,000 more people than expected. However, the population growth estimate has not been updated yet. And so the published population growth estimate that is the accepted percentage, and I'm not remembering which agencies, but I believe it's Clackamas County's estimate, which is the one that planning that Kelly uses. It was, I believe it's 2.2% per year, 2.21 average annual growth rate or something like that. And so when we looked at that, our ending proposed population for 2035 didn't change, but our starting population increased. So what it did is it shifted the numbers a little bit. Like the existing level of service is a little lower than it was in the prior draft because there are more people and therefore we have less acres per person. And therefore the need is a little bit greater. And so it shifts the responsibility a little bit, and it did change the calculations.
Everything so. Okay. Did any else have any questions? Any comments, concerns? Does anybody have a motion that they would like to entertain? Somebody?
I'll move to accept the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the amendment. I assume that includes the language of support the amended city of Sandy Parks and Trails Master.
That's the language I meant to use.
That's what I heard you say. Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, David. Motion by, Will, seconded by David. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. All righty. Tracy, thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I guess I will depart the meeting now, but have fun with the rest of your agenda. Nice to see you. I think I will decline that offer at this time, Don. Thank you.
No problem. Enjoy your dinner.
All right, thanks. Bye.
You bet. Okay, next agenda item is Sandy Pool Exploratory Task Force. Michelle.
This is me posting it. There we go. Great. Hey, can everybody see those of you who were on the call? Can you see it? Everything? Perfect. Okay. Well, the objective, real quick, is I just want to go through the findings of the Sandy Pool Exploratory Task Force, the final report. And this work came out in January of 2022. So the intent today is for me to just go through the report, highlight some of the main aspects of it, and then if we have any questions or anything at the end of it, I'm happy to try to answer those. So we'll get into this here. So understanding the Pool Exploratory Task Force. So the task force was meeting since August of 2021, and there were 3 different options that they were exploring. So whether to renovate the existing natatorium, renovate the natatorium and construct an addition, or construct a new aquatic facility. So those were the 3 things they were evaluating. After a detailed analysis and evaluation, the Pool Exploratory Task Force recommended against renovating or extending the existing aquatic center and favored development. Some of the program needs that they discussed, and if you want to follow along, I did provide a hard copy, but on page 5, they discussed desired aquatic elements, and the Pool Exploratory Task Force talked about lazy rivers, slides, kid pools. The full list is here. Competition pool, whether it be 6 lane or 8 lanes. So that was a discussion. So you can see some of the program needs. And then looking at the competition pool size and the comparison as far as the costs, both capital and operational. They looked at both the 6 lane and the 8 lane. And the 6 lane pool area was 3,150 square feet, where an 8 lane 25-yard pool is 4,350. So the difference between 6 lane and 8 lane was 1,200 square feet. The capital costs increased by $1,075,000 if you go from 6 lane to an 8 lane. And then you can see on the operational side that a competitive pool would be about $500,000 a year. If you had a 6 lane pool, 8 lane pool would be $630,000. And then the return on that versus a 6 lane versus an 8, the difference was about $30,000. Approximate yearly operational subsidy, 6 lanes was approximately $300,000 operational, and then deficit, and then the 8 lanes is $400,000. So a difference of $100,000. And that was on page 6 if you follow on. The very preliminary concepts of the aquatic center square footage was about 30,250 square feet. And that does include the gross factor, and that the gross factor would be like the square feet that it takes to include the walls, that kind of thing. So that's why you see an increase in the 6,050. The preferred concept was option A, and if the group is interested, there's a very detailed description of what each of these options laid out. But option 3 would present the possibility of constructing a new aquatic center as an addition to the middle school annex building to leverage the reduced cost of renovating and minimizing the construction. Locker rooms would provide direct access adjacent to the recreation pool. The pool would be L-shaped, and it allows a direct view for the aquatics offices and spectators. And ultimately, the Exploratory Task Force decided on this layout for those reasons. And as we get into, you'll see the project costs were significantly reduced with going with this option as well. Just to provide just to provide a little bit of context on the site. So let's pretend we're in a helicopter and we're flying over the site. Here is the Olin Bignall Aquatic Center. You have the middle school, and then this is what we're referring to as the annex where Sandy Net currently is. This would be the option 3A overlaid. So you would deconstruct or demo these two buildings and build on top of the annex. And here's the area that the Exploratory Task Force concentrated on was the aquatics portion of it. So option 2B and 3A, you can see with 3A, the construction costs were about 20.5 million. And then including the indirect project costs, we are at about 26.62 million. You can see compared to option 2B that there's a significant difference in option 2B versus 3A. Ultimately, that's where the Exploratory Task Force landed on option 3A. And it also provided a recreation pool and some needed amenities with that layout versus the other. There's some highlights to 3A as well. So we can see here that the aquatic construction cost was lower. The operational efficiency layout, it was compact, it was efficient. Accommodating competition and recreation swim programs, so that was accomplished in 3A. Oops. The aquatic center integration, so it created a holistic process or a project also looking at the conventional park improvements. And you can see here that allows the Greenway Park connector from Pleasant Street. Sorry, Jocelyn. So ultimately, that's how they also the grid that set them up to make decisions that 3A was the preferred option. So what's next? The goal for staff is to write an RFP to move all three legs of the stool forward, and the three legs of the stool include the recreation side, aquatics, as well as the park improvements. This process would involve engaging the public, so this would include informal focus groups, informal boards and committees. And then the staff would start to identify funding sources and work with the council to set up budget parameters and establish policies to work towards as we move through design and development. Okay, and with that very quick overview, I'm optimistic that everybody took the time to read the 150-page document every week. Yep. So if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. So I guess opening it up for questions. Any questions, thoughts?
So what is the proposed timeline on moving forward?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on an RFP, and that draft, the short answer is RFP about a month in front of the council in May, and then hopefully moving forward with advertising the RFP in May.
And that's going to include design services, construction documents?
That would be hopefully for the park. Yeah.
And then on the pool side.
Yeah, so on the aquatic and recreation side, the two deliverables from the RFP would be creating a bond ready or potentially looking for funding for the aquatic and recreation side. And then the second deliverable would be going through design development, bid and build for the park improvement side. Those two deliverables will go concurrently, and then hopefully breaking ground on park improvement if that's the council.
So it's nice to see a little progress going. And councilor?
Yes.
What is your read on the council's support levels.
Well, I would say support for all of it. I think everybody supports all of it. I don't think there's any question there. It's gonna be for the parks improvement. I think you're gonna have a lot of possible. From the aquatic side, it's gonna be just a matter of. So, but I feel very confident. I don't think there's anyone on council that opposes this.
Good.
So, and I feel fairly confident about that.
Okay, very good. Alex or David, do you guys have any comments or questions?
No, not at this time. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to get myself off of mute. It got stuck for some reason. I'm like, oh no. But no, I was able to read most of it, and I didn't have any additional comments or questions. So I looked at the options, and that one looked to be the best.
David, any comments or questions? Not hearing anything? Well, any comments or questions?
It's a lot.
It is a lot of money, and a lot of
A
process.
lot of process.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew the money. That's just, it's just not cheap.
No.
Well, that's today's dollars too.
Yeah, and so there's not,
That's,
it's not,
that's if we started construction yesterday.
I mean, it's not a cheap, I mean, no, it wasn't money, it's a lot of process and a lot of.
It's a big process.
I just thought it was interesting that middle school Dennis was saying. You're plowing everything over, blow it all over, I mean, because it still needs upgrades. That was the only thing that was kind of.
So several years ago, there was a study in that building, they had a engineer, yeah, go through all that, so you probably pursue that. Yeah, that was it's funny to me as well, because that, if you'd have asked me, I would have told you that was the building that would be constructed, so, I'm surprised that it's actually okay.
Plus it's almost a daylight basement. I mean,
It pretty much is, yeah, absolutely, yes.
just seemed hard to, it seemed hard to design around, but I mean, it's obviously done your homework, so it's just.
A lot of concrete in that building.
Yeah. There's a lot of buildings.
And I got the options. Yeah, the one that was 20 million. Free, I mean, it just looks like the deal. Just like you go that building. Thing.
And yes, it does need some work, but it's, it's a decent building, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
The other thing, and this is just from, I've been, now that I'm over in this neighborhood, I've been doing a lot more walking through this area. And it's already kind of disconnected from the lower part is beautiful. The skate park in the fields, and I didn't even know that damn track was down there. And it's a great piece of property. And it seems kind of disconnected from that. I was trying to figure out how that connects with the whole flow of things from the community center down into the rest of this property. And I don't know that this helps it either. But maybe it does.
And I think that's part of the exciting aspect as we move forward with this process, because we'll be engaging the Parks Board on designs, input, and how do we integrate all of that. And that's part of the reason too, we refer to the third place of the stool, because I think that's ideally what we've tried to do. That campus is at the heart of the city, connected to the Sandy River, which is just fantastic. So I think there's potential for that as we move through it. How do we make that site, conducive to that?
Yeah, and then, we've got the trail that Sarah got funding for, which is awesome. But just the two different plateaus already seem disconnected. So I think connecting those is a big opportunity.
Yeah, and that's the part of the opportunity, that's also a big part of the challenge. Right, to create a unified field.
Good afternoon.
Okay, moving along then, unless there's other comments or questions. Old business, I see that in staff updates. Do you have any updates for us tonight?
Just real brief, we're still recruiting for some positions and we're working on getting up to full steam as a department. So I'll keep everybody updated as we move through those processes. We are planning for the summer, so we are planning a July 4th fireworks event. So that is in the works, pun intended. I know, it's late, I'm gonna be punchy. And then we're working on the Mountain Festival. We're gonna partner, I visited and had the privilege of meeting the board chairs, so that's been great. We concerts and movies in the park. We're gonna do 2 concerts, 2 movies, and we're so excited to announce that we were able to secure Johnny Lobo and Nuts for one of the evenings. Yeah, and then a Tom Petty tribute called Petty Fever. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Next question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're excited. So, a quick shout out to Carol, because her and I were like, gosh, let's rework the sponsorship triangle. And we set a goal of like $4,000 soliciting sponsorship, and as of this week, she's at $7,000.
Excellent.
It's excellent. So I want to celebrate her, and she told me she's not stopping there. So yes, you go get it. And truly thank you to the businesses that are supporting us, because genuinely without their support, their sponsorship, these free events would be awesome.
Very nice.
So we're that's my big update.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, we come to the end. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? I believe we have 2 vacancies right now.
Correct.
So if anybody knows anybody that's interested, please spread the word, pass it along.
That's for your friends.
Pass to your friends, bother your neighbors. And let's see if we get a full board. With that, meeting adjourned.
Have a good
Thanks,
night,
guys.
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming, Tiana.